Right, so after more than 3 months of a total humanitarian blockade, Israel has finally permitted a minuscule amount of aid into Gaza. They were getting it in the neck over it. They were feeling the pressure. Well, not half as much of the people in Gaza at your mercies were, so forgive me if I play the world's smallest violin over this and say, oh dear, how sad, never mind, where it comes to Israel over this. It's a performative gesture at the end of the day, a performative gesture that won't help anyone functionally. Just 5 aid trucks thus far have been allowed to cross the border, despite the United Nations estimating that 500 are needed daily to meet the basic survival needs of the besieged population. But worse than the fact just 5 trucks entered was what 2 of them actually contained. You see, they weren't carrying food, they weren't carrying water, they weren't carrying medical supplies. Now, when the aid workers on the scene opened up those trucks, they were utterly horrified by what they found inside, because in 2 of those trucks they discovered they had been loaded with burial shrouds. As Israel lays waste to Gaza, destroys even the wreckage of what they've already destroyed to simply obliterate any sign of Gazan civilization from the map, declares that Israel is taking the land, along come 5 aid trucks, 2 of which don't bring aid, but a forecast of annihilation instead. Right, so how would you take it if after 73 days of aid being blockaded, 2 million people starving, no food, no water, no medicine being allowed in, but Israel having begun what is ostensibly being declared their final push against Gaza, Operation Gideon's Chariots, being meted out, displacing tens of thousands again, injuring or killing hundreds if not thousands, and when aid gets promised, what if instead of the 500 daily trucks needed to meet the basic needs of the Strip right now, you see just 5 arrive? And then when you open them up, to your absolute horror, to find almost half the goods Israel decided to send in turning out to be burial shrouds. How would you interpret that? It seems pretty obvious to me that such a grim statement was not one of aid but intent. We aren't going to waste food on people we're not going to allow to live. After 73 days of being starved to the point of death, they hand you your shroud. Sick isn't the word for this, but again, mainstream media won't tell you about it either. Again, it comes from independent media. The delivery of just 5 trucks on May the 19th came after 73 days of total blockade. During this period, Gaza's infrastructure has completely collapsed, famine has continued to spread, and essential services continue to vanish. The United Nations now reports that 1 in 5 Gazans face starvation, and on May the 20th issued a chilling warning that 14,000 babies in Gaza risk dying within 48 hours without immediate intervention. And it is in this context, sending only 5 trucks, with nearly half of their cargo comprising of burial materials, was not just offensively insufficient, was not just insulting, was not just a further psychological assault, but it's a direct provocation. It's a statement that as far as the government of Benjamin Netanyahu is concerned, the people of Gaza can't be allowed to live. The humanitarian crisis is not a byproduct of this war on mostly women and children. It is part and parcel of it. It is a consequence of policy. Since October 2023, Israel has instituted what amounts to a siege, controlling access to food, to water, to medicine, to fuel into Gaza. The devastating result has led to the point we are now at, with internal displacement of nearly 100,000 Gazans happening in just the last 4 days. And that follows intensified assaults on Khan Yunis and other areas of the Strip too, northern Gaza, Gaza City. Israeli military operations have rendered cities uninhabitable and pushed civilians further into unsafe, overcrowded shelters, in areas they claim are safe but never are, with no aid, no support except for the means to carry out burials. In Khan Yunis, for example, thousands fled in panic as Israeli forces expanded their offensive. Meanwhile, airstrikes have continued to target key infrastructure, and we're back to hospitals again. The Nasser hospital's main medicine storage was destroyed, and the Indonesian hospital's generators were targeted. Against this background, Israel's meagre aid offering is pathetic, but it's intentional. Martin Griffiths, the UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, labelled the aid a drop in the ocean, emphasising its utter inadequacy. Tom Fletcher, the former British ambassador, voiced alarm at the delivery, pointing out the danger to those 14,000 babies right now. And on top of all of that, there is this jarring act of depravity of burial shrouds being passed off as humanitarian assistance. This one act alone is less like a concession to international pressure by Israel and more like a declaration of intent for what they plan to do next. Benjamin Netanyahu's remarks further confirm this. In a recent statement, he declared that all of Gaza will become Israeli territory, and openly admitted that the limited aid was permitted solely due to diplomatic pressure from allies like the United States. So this has nothing to do with humanitarianism at all. It's all public relations. And even this paltry aid was controversial within the Israeli government. Far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir criticised the decision, calling any form of aid a betrayal to Israel. Former Knesset member Moshe Feiglin went even further, grotesquely declaring that every child in Gaza is an enemy of Israel, all justifying what is arguably still to come, that the sending of those burial shrouds into Gaza represents. It is genocidal rhetoric, both symbolically by sending these shrouds in under the pretense of aid, and in words from truly depraved individuals. But it all reflects the dehumanization of Palestinians that seems so much the norm in Israel and amongst Zionists. But that should be truly alarming to anyone disgusted at what they have witnessed for 19 months now. A comprehensive investigation by Dutch newspaper NRC has documented expert consensus that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. 7 renowned genocide scholars concluded that Israel's systematic destruction of infrastructure, the starvation of civilians, and targeted killings fit the legal definition of genocide. An excerpt of this piece reads, "Is Israel committing genocide here? The conclusion that this is the case is no longer reserved for activists. The International Court of Justice, ICJ, considers it plausible, and where human rights organisations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and UN Rapporteur Francesca Albanese previously spoke of genocide, the director of the NIOD now also speaks of genocidal violence. Other NIOD researchers have already spoken out. At the same time, it remains a loaded term because of its connection with the Holocaust. In their editorials, newspapers dance cautiously around the concept. On social media, it is also referred to as G3N0C1D3 because some tech companies are banning the word. The foreign affairs spokesman of the German CDU party told NRC that he does not believe in the theory of genocide. But besides being a subject of social debate, genocide is also a subject of science. And that field of research, genocide studies, does not see it as a yes-no question, but as a process. And contrary to public opinion, leading genocide researchers are surprisingly unanimous. The Netanyahu government, they say, is in that process. According to the majority, even in its final stages. That is why most researchers no longer speak only of genocidal violence, but of genocide. The deliberate nature of all of the devastation in Gaza, the genocidal process, if you like, to follow on from those academics is underscored by the targeted airstrikes on hospitals, schools and shelters. The violence extends even to witnesses too. Certainly the number of journalists deliberately targeted by Israel in Gaza bears this out, but another tragic example has just been reported as well. Back in March, you might recall, Red Crescent ambulance workers were killed, reportedly executed and buried by Israeli forces. Well, the 12-year-old boy, Mohammed al-Bardawil, who had been the sole witness to that, has now been killed by Israeli forces as well, in what appears to have been a deliberate targeting. Such actions not only erase lives, but attempt to eliminate evidence of war crimes, and by not coming down on Israel harder and faster, they're getting away with that. Compounding this is the disturbing rhetoric from figures in the Israeli military. An Israeli doctor currently serving as a reservist reportedly compared Palestinians to cockroaches in internal communications. But again, that goes unreported. This incendiary language has received no attention in Western media, which remains preoccupied with other major stories, such as British sports commentator Gary Lineker sharing a video condemning Israeli atrocity that included a rat emoji, now seeing him lambasted as an anti-Semite for that. Israel has now announced that only 9 trucks in total will be allowed into Gaza, less than 2% of what is required daily. It's just an insult. More shrouds to come, is it? The US have added another layer of complicity too. The Trump administration continues to shield Israel diplomatically at the United Nations, at the Security Council, and will continue to supply weapons. A recent report cited a US official stating that they would continue to support Israel in this regard as long as they have spared the political fallout of images showing starving children. So even now, Trump prioritizes optics over ethics. Be a shame if those images we all see, they get tagged in relentlessly then, wouldn't it? The images emerging from Gaza in this day and age, here and now, resemble historical atrocities the world vowed never to repeat. Yet here we are with too many leaders sitting on their hands and too much of the media casting a blind eye, which is precisely why it is happening again. While malnourished children, mass graves, destroyed hospitals and bombed out shelters call not for diplomatic hedging but for immediate international action. Israel's decision to send 5 trucks of aid, 2 of which contained burial shrouds, shows the intent of a broader campaign not merely to suppress but to erase. It is incumbent upon the international community, governments, NGOs, media, all of us, to challenge this trajectory and keep doing it. Because the moment we fall silent, we become complicit. By allowing the continuation of the siege under the guise of security or counter-terrorism, the world risks endorsing the collective punishment of over 2 million people, half of whom are children. The narrative that frames this crisis as some kind of complex geopolitical issue obscures the core reality of it, the deliberate infliction of suffering on a defenseless civilian population. The people of Gaza are not collateral damage in a fight against Hamas when they are all seen as Hamas, nor is it about hostages held by Hamas. The civilians are the primary targets in a policy of starvation and displacement, and they get handed shrouds so they can now prepare themselves for the end. In the shadow of mass displacement, widespread famine, and systematic destruction, such a gesture can only be interpreted as a message that the lives of Palestinians are expendable. As the death toll rises and the humanitarian crisis deepens, it is not enough to debate semantics or wait for something to shift. We have to drive the shift. The international community we're all part of must demand a full and immediate lifting of the blockade, unfettered humanitarian access and accountability for war crimes. Anything less is a betrayal not only of the people of Gaza, but of the very principles of human rights and international law that we all supposedly support. The world has seen this before. We're seeing it again when for too many years we've said never again. Well, it's here again, too late for that. Demand action. Meanwhile, if you would like a bit of a pick-me-up after this video, Israeli arms might be getting delayed somewhat. Another of those, oh dear, how sad, never mind moments. Spain, at least, appears to be doing something about Israeli arms shipments. It's got shipping company Maersk in the dock over it, in fact. So get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people. And I will hopefully catch you on the next video. Cheers, folks.